that you had to pay was that connection fee, which is also called IP transit, to share the information between the networks. The peering was enacted, and that was for free. That made possible information revolution, and that was backed by science, because signals, the signals are made up of electromagnetic signals, which is a light, and light passing through a medium the cost of passing light through medium is almost zero. And if you look at it's like having light go through mirrors. When light ricochet off mirrors, mirror doesn't suffer any damage. That's why over the years of the pandemic, from 2018 to 2021, the network traffic increased like 5 times, but network maintenance cost may remain the same. However, there is a new threat to this information revolution, which is a paid peering and sender pay rule. European Union is tinkering with the paid peering or sender pay, I don't know which is basically bring back the data delivery cost. Now, South Korea has already enacted sender pay rule only among ISPs. It was not imposed on content providers, but among ISPs, where sending data is now financially penalized. Now there's a delivery cost. If you are sending money into the network, you have to pay. What's the result? Well, because sending money becomes unpopular, the ISPs didn't want to host popular content providers. That means IP transit fees, when skyrocketed high, you can see for Seoul, $3.77, compare that to Paris, 45 cents. So like 8 times Paris, 5 times New York. And same thing in 2021, IP transit fees is 8 times London, 10 times Frankfurt, and impact on end users is clear. Big content providers, they obtain volume discount, but small to mid-sized content providers suffer most because they cannot get volume discount. Now, Africa TV, which is one of the, it's like TikTok in Korea, they are paying almost all of their profit as internet access fees. 2021, Watcha, which is a domestic video service, was paying 10% of revenue as internet access fees. In 2020, COVID location announcement system, the system that announces the location of pandemic patients, that was not fully functioning due to high transit fees. Let me see. And let me see. So local video services dropped out of competition against YouTube because of high internet access fees. So since Naver and Kakao, Korea has not seen any unicorn company. And small ISPs are cannibalized by big ISPs because of a high domestic transit fees. Now, it doesn't stop there. Small overseas content providers are refusing to connect directly with the Korean ISPs because the Korean ISPs are now trying to impose this data delivery cost to the overseas content providers as well. And overseas content providers are unwilling to carry or invest in, or they are forced to charge Korean eyeball-heavy content uploaders, or they are forced to intentionally degrade Korea services. For instance, Twitch last year had to intentionally degrade their services to decrease the paid peering fees, basically data delivery costs that they had to pay to Korean ISPs. And probable impact, if this trend continues, you can see BTS. BTS became popular by uploading a lot of videos about their, daily lives. Now they cannot do that because other countries charge sender pay rule. Then platforms hosting BTS content will have to charge BTS in proportion to the popularity of their content. Same thing, you can see Psy, the singer of Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style is the video that I think is like number 4 in terms of the number of views throughout the history of the internet. And the more popular you become, or the more sought for, or more viewed by viewers around the world, the uploaders will have to pay the ISPs whose customers are the viewers of the content, and that will basically fragment Korea out of the internet as we know it. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Park. I really appreciate that, particularly the scary slide at the end. That's got everybody's attention, I must say. Joyce, do we have anything coming in online at the moment? Okay. I was looking around. I didn't see anyone wishing to jump up and suddenly react. However, Noel, I'm looking at you. Could I ask you to come to the microphone? Because, yes, look at me, dull. Come on. Yes, you, Noel.
Oh, me.
Yes, you're the one. You are the one I very much want to hear from. And you're the icebreaker for me, because I know I can rely on you, and I also know what you're going to say, which is a good thing. If I can get you to come to the microphone, because from an internet society perspective, you're doing a lot of work on internet fragmentation. So I thought not so much a question, but you might want to share with the audience who perhaps weren't in this room earlier, some of the impact work that is going on. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Oh, this is on. I think my voice is loud enough. And thank God I'm wearing heels today, because I'm finally tall enough for the microphone. Yes, so we have worked with actually the speakers and their organizations in trying to kind of map out how fragmentation manifests, and we would like to be as much as we can, to be concrete about how we think it manifests, and whether and how it might impact the value of the internet as a public good, a global public good. So we have I think I mentioned this in the panel earlier. What we are doing is that we are collecting specific cases, one of which the sender pays rules that are being discussed. Well, actually, I think now, in a way, it's already being practiced in South Korea, but it's also a very topical issue now in the EU. So it's and it's not a new issue either. But to look at these specific cases, and then to outline the specific ways in which they might impact the open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy internet. And finally, to have some guidance for stakeholders and advocates like us on what we need to do to respond to this, whether this is a good development for us and for the internet, or whether this is a development that may not be good for our uses of the internet.
Thank you very much. And I do appreciate that I did put you on the spot, but you'll forgive me eventually. Thank you very much indeed. All right, let's move now to Minister Tang. So Mr. Tang, if you wouldn't mind bringing some of the end user perspective into all of this. Over to you, Audrey.
Okay, assuming you can hear me, really glad to be here. So for everyday users, internet fragmentation naturally leads to a situation of uneven online experiences. We both connect to the same site from different jurisdictions. We see something completely different. And according to the discussions at the Policy Network on Internet Fragmentation, or PNIF, Internet fragmentations that affect user experience can come from political developments, such as content censorship, as well as commercial ones, such as an ISP compelling users toward their preferred services while paywalling the rest. But one example I want to bring today to share with you is something that has a technical motivation. The example is to prevent the spread of malware, so computer virus. And we have implemented as part of the DNS RPC response policy zones in Taiwan by the Taiwan Network Information Center, or TWNIC. Now, the TWNIC manages the .tw top-level domain, but many malwares are not hosted in that domain. And so TWNIC cooperates with domestic telecoms in implementing the RPC, which restricts the access to malicious domain names through domestic DNS operators' participation. Now, all that is very technical and well and good, but this year, Taiwan's e-commerce vendors asked TWNIC to extend the RPC mechanism to defend against fraudsters impersonating their e-commerce websites. Now deployed as the first line of scam protection, the user experience goes something like that. There's an email, we click on the phishing link that masquerades as a popular e-commerce site, but instead of seeing this impersonated website, we see a notice, and I quote, "This domain is involved in fraud cases and has been blocked. If you have any questions, please send an email to 165RPC, end of quote. So the mechanism goes like this. The Non-Store Retailer Association acts as a contact window for reporting. So they must first file a case to the police department, and then they can report to our Administration for Digital Industries, the ADI, which is a trusted reporter in the RPC multi-stakeholder mechanism, to seek a quick response action on fraudulent website domain names to prevent the public from being deceived by phishing and cybercrime and so on. But obviously, and some of you may already be thinking this, the RPC mechanism requires very careful multi-stakeholder governance, transparency, and coordination. Otherwise, even the most well-intentioned mechanism can lead to fragmentation, eventually causing harm to basic human rights, such as freedom of expression and association online. And so we paid extra attention to this concern. Now both the police force and the ADI, the administration, published a list of RPC domains as open data, ensuring quick update by participating DNS providers, of course, but because it's open data, human rights groups can scrutinize them to facilitate appeal processes and also enhance accountability. So this is just a very small vignette, but I hope I explain the user experience of what it looks like from a DNS RPC experience in Taiwan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I wondered if any of the other panelists wanted to react to that at all. I'll open the floor to you first. Benjamin, are you tempted to react? If not, it's okay.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. And thank you to Minister Audrey for sharing that example of a very useful form of internet fragmentation. And it's really an illustration of how the internet fragmentation, when it is following a procedure that has checks and balances and that follows due process, can actually lead to benefits that are in line with what the community or society actually wants. And I think those are key elements of how we actually look at this whole picture of internet fragmentation. Back to you, Cheryl.
Thank you very much. Anything out of the Zoom room? What a quiet lot of remote participants have. Now, let me see. Is there anybody wanting to make? Please, can we get a roving mic, or if you would care to... No, we're going to get to the standing mic. Fantastic. And please just...
Good morning.
Maria
Stella for the record.
Yes, good.
Yeah. Okay, so from the user perspective, so I'm quite new to APrIGF, but as a user, I think internet fragmentation for me is when I go online on social media and I see a different content from other users. So there's the role of big tech companies
social media companies who are controlling what we see online because they're profiling us every day. So that for me is from a user perspective that we also have to consider in this situation. Thank you.
Just while you're there, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is it making your experience more selected, or are you
For me,
being exploited?
It's not bad sometimes, but it's leading to harms that we can only realize when we have been profiled for so long, because we are being boxed in this kind of profile that they see that we, this box that we belong in.
Mhm.
So we are limited in ways that we can choose the way that we behave, the things that we know. So misinformation, disinformation spreads. And also, I think the right to be forgotten also contributes to internet fragmentation, though I'm pro the right to be forgotten under the data protection law, but sometimes it limits what others know. Because if we exercise that right, we are limiting access to information.
Thank you. And if I heard correctly, I'm hearing a difference between choosing what you may wish to have as a curated set of things presented and just having a profile done, regardless of how that information is sourced, and a curated set of things being delivered to you with perhaps significant biases that you're unaware of. And I paraphrase that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Who else feels like that? Hands up. Well, yeah, I do. I definitely do. All right, so that's an interesting, very, very interesting point. I want to thank you for that. Someone, yes. Oh, hello, Dr. Park, please go ahead. I didn't see your hand up.
Just wanted to add that Korean government also engages in the type of blocking that Minister Tang has just described, and that creates a lot of interesting, amusing experience where only South Koreans cannot view North Korean government websites. If they go to Japan, if they go to the US, they go to Taiwan, they can see North Korean websites. And there are many websites that are blocked, that are available to everywhere else, but not available in South Korea only. For instance, there's a website that provides information on medical abortion, meaning abortion by medicine. That website is blocked only in 3 countries around the whole world. That includes South Korea. So that makes the user experience uneven, as Minister Tang has described. Now, what is interesting is if you are tech savvy, or if you are willing to pay $1 per month, you can use VPN. And you can, act like you are in Taiwan or Japan and access those websites. Now, what clutters the problem is if the government becomes really serious about blocking, then they try to shut down the VPN services that are popular within Korea to access these websites. But that's exactly what's happening in mainland China now. Fragmentation is not really, somebody else's history. It's happening right now. We really need to have a philosophical discussion about, okay, internet gave us freedom, just like God gave us freedom. What does freedom mean? Well, freedom to make mistakes and, apologize for it, repent upon it. Shall we really block these harmful contents through all these without due process, without really international discussion about it, so that people with the resources can access all websites around the world, wherever they are. but people without access to VPN are limited in their access to knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see, Benjamin, you can pop straight in. You will need to unmute.
Okay. Sorry. I really like the comment about the social media platforms and also what Professor Park was saying. So if I can talk about both, the internet is definitely fragmented, and for the large chunk of people who are not using the internet raw, most people, the average person out there is actually using internet mediated through the tech platforms. The experience of what is information coming through the internet is not from individual websites, it's going through social media platforms and is being controlled by algorithms. And the decisions of what gets through or what does not get through are being made by businesses that have obligations to their stakeholders, their shareholders in their particular community and society, and have obligations to their own sets of community standards, which may not align with the communities in which their content is being viewed. So there is a problem of fragmentation, not meeting the needs of the societies in which the information is actually appearing. So that's something that that's a difficult question, because should the governments, the elected governments that are supposed to represent their people, have a say over what the unelected tech companies, which are bigger than most of the governments of the world, are able to actually transmit across into their societies? Or is there a multi-stakeholder approach that needs to be applied to reach a discussion on what should be allowed in or not, as Professor Park was saying? Because in many senses, the content that's being regulated, and Mr. Audrey has given a good example of kind of content that we don't want coming in, malware. Or it could be in certain societies. I was in a meeting where it was very clearly shared that if certain messages were to come in, they would start riots, and they had already started riots in that particular community. So should there be an ability to stop this kind of content from coming in? So this definitely, we need to have more engagement, more discussion, and to where each community, each society is going to draw those lines of fragmentation.
Thank you very much. And hopefully that's got some thoughts going. I've seen Cheryl coming to the microphone, but first of all, we will go to a remote participant.
Thanks very much, Cheryl. We have a comment from Andrew Dalglish. As well as profile-based fragmentation and jurisdictional fragmentation, I feel there has always been a kind of longitudinal fragmentation. As just when I think I figured out roughly how the internet works, it transforms due to technical and service innovation, and I have to relearn.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Cheryl, if you can.
I just want to have a question for Kyung Shin. How does it work in Korea with the ISPs and the content sender pays system? Because the system that we have here in Australia is that while the big telcos are fighting really hard to try and get the content players to pay them for it, what a lot of the content players do is actually connect straight into the IXPs, and the big telcos won't connect to the IXPs because they're like, oh no, we charge you for transit, so therefore you lot of customers, you need to pay us. So we have kind of the opposite situation where I, as the main IXP operator and a not-for-profit entity in Australia, we trunk a lot of content around the country in conjunction with the content providers, and I invite content providers onto my network all the time. Like, if you've got content, come to me. So it's sort of, if why don't they use the IXPs more within Korea?
Well, I have a simple answer to that. There is no true neutral IXP in Korea. Each big telco has its own IXP. So there are three different IXPs for each of the big telcos.
Gotcha.
There's one new, there are like 3 other neutral IXPs. Now, big telcos are not connecting there. So there is no IXP that the content providers can peer with.
Yeah. So here we
big,
have pretty much
telcos.
all the small ISPs in Australia, apart from the big 4. Well, sorry, 3 of the big 4 don't connect to the peering points, but pretty much all the other ones do. And we serve about a petabyte of content per day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Food for thought indeed.
So should I try and come over to Korea and set something up?
So looks like an opportunity to me. Yes, please. We have another remote participant.
Makito Lei says, while we are in the same world, accessing the same internet, some content/services are not available to certain countries. For instance, Microsoft Azure and ChatGPT do not provide service to Cambodia.
Who would like to react to that one? Any of our speakers want to react? Oh, yes, Benjamin, do I see the microphone coming off?
I was wondering whether that actually is within the scope of our discussion, because it looks more like commercial choices.
Okay. Part of the issue, remember we started, is how we define internet fragmentation. And if you're looking at it at a different layer, where what it means to you is going to be different to someone who is operating, for example, in the technical layer. So this is part of the problem. You can say to people just seek their view on internet fragmentation. But exactly what it is they believe it is needs to be established first. And in some cases, the best way is simply to collect the data and use things like the impact assessment tool, which helps guide those very exploration points. What does it mean, right? They're the types of questions that we need to, and I'm getting on my soapbox and I promise to get off it momentarily. We need to encourage the decision makers, and this is where the case studies that ISOC are doing is so very important, to consider in all of this. All right, I'm going to look around the room once more and see if anybody has, yes, we do. Well, come on up. This is like, don't stand on, this is a town hall. Your voice is welcome.
So it's me again, Maristella, for the record. So I would just like to add that when I was thinking about regulations and ChatGPT not being available in some countries, or some apps are not available in Europe, I think it's probably not in all cases, but probably because of regulation also, but not in terms of infrastructure or the technical side of implementing it, but on data protection. Because I think this is one good side of it, that our regulation on data protection actually limits the applications who go inside our countries who are not able to protect our data. So if there are certain measures to protect us from unlawful processing and things like that, from to ensure data security, then it's good. But it also fragments the internet, because not everyone will be able to access the information that others are accessing.
Thank you very much. Anybody seeking our attention online, Joyce? Not at this stage. All right, well, we might take the opportunity to move to question 3, which will be our next slide. And I'm going to ask Benjamin to kick us off on this one, but welcome everybody's input, of course. We're going to move our discussion now, and that includes the audience, to what do we think we can do about internet fragmentation? Is it possible to avoid it, and how? Ben?
Thanks, Cheryl. Okay, so I'm going to approach this in a different way. Before we do something, and actually what we need to do is to understand it better and to define it better and to actually have better conversations on what internet fragmentation is. Because as we all agree, internet fragmentation exists on a spectrum. Absolute no fragmenting and no is something that's feasible or desirable in the modern world. nor is absolute fragmentation. So somewhere along the line, there are instances of where it's desirable or not desirable, and that depends a lot on the needs, the aspirations, the objectives, the priorities, the values of the societies which are using the internet at any point in time. So my thoughts on what to do are to have better engagement, multi-stakeholder engagement on these decisions that are being made, and to be able to assess them according to a couple of criteria, which is intentionality, whether you are really making the decision to fragment with all the knowledge that is required, the impact, who are the people who may be impacted or second order that you're not thinking of, and also the nature of the needs of the societies that are involved. And this requires, in many cases, capacity building, because there are policy considerations that the technical community may not be aware of. There may be commercial needs that the rest of us who are not in the commercial side may not be aware of, and it's the commercial side that actually owns a lot of the infrastructure. There may be technical considerations that the policy people do not know about. So more communication among the multi-stakeholders and capacity building is needed. And that's how we avoid, in my view, not avoid internet fragmentation, but avoid undesirable internet fragmentation. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone online wishing to go in? If not, let's go to the microphone. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to ask, Chad Ramilo for the record. So I want to ask a question directly then. You said avoid undesirable, internet fragmentation. So is there a desirable internet fragmentation? And I want to ask, what would that be? And then the second part of the question is, what is the most undesirable internet fragmentation? Thanks.
Thanks for a very tough question, right? So the lawyer's answer will be, it depends. But okay, to try and give some examples, there may be situations where I think Minister Audrey Tang gave a good example of blocking malware. Or in Singapore, authorities blocked 350 phishing scam websites because they were domain spotting. They were in fact being used in a huge cyber scam campaign that was going on, targeting one of the major banks. So in some cases, there are particular needs for fragmentation. And content is the most challenging one, because one person's protection of society is another person's censorship. And that's where the debates are going to happen. The very, very undesirable fragmentation is that everybody's got in different systems that are not interoperable. It breaks down communication, it breaks down trade, it breaks down the progress and development. But in between those, I think there are a whole lot of examples, and I invite my fellow panelists also to jump in with examples or totally disagree with me.
Let's see if they do.
I think that example that you gave, Benjamin, there are other equally urgent or urgent sounding examples. For instance, websites distributing child CSAM, child sexual abuse material. Now, when you see one, do you block it, or do you trace to the root of it and arrest the person who is doing the distribution? If you just block it, it will be viewed by other people. If, for instance, Singaporean government just blocks it, everywhere else, in other countries, it will still be available. So that's what I've been telling the Korean government about this. If you see foreign website distributing, harmful material that are targeting Korean eyeballs, instead of blocking it, you should go to the root of it. You should continue the investigation while the website is available, and track down the wrongdoer. What the government is doing by focusing so much resources on just blocking instead of so much blocking is actually derelict their duties to protect people. These days, a lot of police officers, when they see, everywhere, like, catching criminals, it gives them points for promotion, especially, child sex crimes gives you promotion. Now you're a police officer. What's your job? I mean, do you sit in front of a computer and trying to block those websites, or do you go out there and actually try to attack the root of the problem? I think the balance is moving more and more toward just blocking and not putting the resources where they are needed. And that's where I think sometimes, I don't want to say, it is bad fragmentation or it is bad blocking. I'm just saying there can be better blocking or better unblocking, right? If it is coupled with a proper investigation.
I agree a lot with Prof. Park, and definitely we should definitely be pursuing the criminals. For example, CSAM is a very, very good example, or rather bad situation that is good. And really, having met with people from the Queensland police who have been actually able to track down, I think it is a very worthwhile effort. I think the great problem is that it's a long process which can take years to track down. The investigation that they carried out took several years to track down, and during that time, you have to balance it. The material is still available, and more material is being added and is being seen by people in the community which the authority has to take care of. So they have to balance. While is it maybe a compromise, block and investigate? And in some cases, when they investigated, they were not able to actually apprehend the criminal because the criminal is in a bulletproof jurisdiction. And having discussed with Interpol people, because we have a center here, this is a problem that there are many of these, whether it's fraud, whether it's child sexual abuse, whether it's ISIS, they are in jurisdictions where they cannot be arrested because of the nature of the government of the place they're sitting in. So what do you do in that case? The only thing to protect the community is to block.
Audrey, did you want to come in on this one before we move on?
Yeah, I have a very quick comment. So as some of you know, Taiwan is top in Asia in terms of internet freedom. And I think our communities, especially human rights groups, tolerated the DNS RPC mechanism, not just because of its transparency, but also because it's not an effective paywall. Like even for malware sites, for court-ordered cases, which is very clear-cut, there are still like security researchers which has a legitimate interest in connecting to that domain and getting the malware code. In Taiwan's case, they just switched to a different DNS server in which if it's IPv4, it's 4 digits, easy to remember, or 1 digit repeated 4 times. But in any case, to circumvent that, you do not have to pay VPN or have a credit card in other countries. So I think that relative ease of circumvention, if you will, is what encouraged the multi-stakeholder adoption of the RPC mechanism. Thank you.
Is there anyone online? Great, because we've got a lovely lineup here. Over to you, Jen.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. I am an internet user from Hong Kong. I would like to keep my name and face anonymous in this intervention. I would like to ask, what can we do to everyone, and as well as the panelists, what can we do to people, ordinary people from countries that's facing a human rights crisis because they got cut up? And on this very day of the 4th anniversary of the 2019 Prince Edward Station attack in Hong Kong, I would like to bring up that getting emotional, okay, as a someone from there. You know, there's like a Hong Kong Chronicles where people cannot access the records of different political and protest event about the protests anymore. It's, you know, internet fragmentation can get very political, and I want to hear what everyone's in the room would, you know, see all these things happen around the world, and what particularly we can do about internet fragmentation, because we, of course, have lots of people in Asia Pacific facing this similar situation. Like, for example, Myanmar, ordinary people got cut out. And so I would like to hear a little bit more about this area as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and huge respect for stepping up. Huge respect. Would any of our panelists like to react to that? Obviously, it's an emotive area, but it's also one where we risk a revision of history that does probably no one service, whether you're inside the demarcation line or beyond. Audrey, did you want to react there first?
Yes. Well, I personally work on the traditional Mandarin translation around the turn of century, Freenet, and that was designed to be a, back then it's called P2P, nowadays we call it decentralized web or something like Web3, but it's a family of technologies that are designed to be tamper-proof and to be censorship resistant. I think one of the main contributions we all can do is just like normalizing the use for end-to-end encrypted messengers like Signal, also to normalize the use of such decentralized web technologies. In my ministry, moda.gov.tw, we publish, before we publish to HTTPS, we publish to IPNS, which is the interplanetary file system. So you can find us on IPNS //moda.gov.tw. And in doing so, in running our IPFS nodes, in investing in IPFS technologies, and so on, we also contribute to the people who value this tamper resistance and censorship resistance in authoritarian regimes by normalizing its use and mutually pinning each other and backing each other up. So I would encourage people to learn more about decentralized web or Web3 if you're crypto-minded, and then normalize the use of such technologies.
Thank you very much. Any of the other panelists want to step in at this point? Okay, well, we do have a lineup.
I'm really happy that Minister Audrey has actually shared that, and I think it's a great example because we have actually in the present day moved away so much from the original technologies that the average person needs. We need to give more awareness and more education to people that there are tools, there are platforms, Freenet, that they can use, that they are not restricted to the common commercial tech platforms that can be blocked, that can be stopped, that can be coerced.
Okay, over to you, please, Pablo.
Thank you. My name is Pablo. I work for APrIGF, and it's been a wonderful discussion. It made me think that most of what we're talking about is fragmentation at the jurisdictional level, and the jurisdictional fragmentation's impact on the user experience for the internet. And I think that was a very good unpacking of the question of fragmentation, but I want to go back to the underlying infrastructure, because I was a little bit worried by those comments about desired fragmentation and undesired fragmentation, as if implying that some fragmentation could be okay. And I think that is still part of the jurisdictional debate. Back to the underlying infrastructure, I think of the slogan of ICANN, One World, One Internet. And I do feel and think that we still live in an one single interoperable network, and in a way it can resolve universally if not prevented by those jurisdictional blockages or those jurisdictional elements. So I just want to feel if that is something that Minister Tang and Benjamin and Professor Park could agree on, and if we can depart from an underlying unfragmented internet as a desired thing to keep, defend, and fight for.
I'm going to ask them to, when they do their summation, respond to that, if you don't mind. And I'd like to take the next speaker, and then they can perhaps respond to you as well.
Hi, I'm Helen from APrIGF Foundation, although I'm just really asking a question about or talking about internet fragmentation from a user's perspective. I just wanted to know what, if anything, we can do with regard to data collection and algorithms really leading to this fragmentation, because I feel that, you know, when you have a thing deciding for you what you're allowed to know and what you're allowed to like, it's really limiting our information on something that we call, you know, the internet. It's supposed to be this information for all. And we have these algorithms deciding for us. And I think we run the risk of, you know, when everything is catered for you, we lose the ability to educate ourselves and question what's correct. And also to have that level of uncomfort that allows us to learn from things. And again, just, you know, in hearing from the other panelists, the amount that we're missing of what's happening in other countries because we have an algorithm deciding what we get to see. Thank you.
That's right. And I'm just going to take one final word, and we'll go back and they can all try and squeeze responses into everything. Andrew, you are closing me out.
Thank you. Andrew from TRBI Vanuatu. Well, I think the answer to this question is to defrag. Yes. So it is quite a broad topic, and as we know, there's no silver bullet to correct it, because there are, I think technically it might be fine, but there are other issues like the politics or the financial situations and the social implications, and even the security are some of the things that contribute to the fragmentation of the internet in different nationalities. So is there any way for, I know Pablo was talking about ICANN, one internet, one world. How effective is sort of uniform regulation across? I believe the only solution is to continue the dialogue, to continue to talk about it at all levels. But I fear that is this fragmentation forcing us to another era of internet governance? Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to ask each of you to do your best to have a go at a response to any or all of those last three questions, but particularly the ones raised from Pablo and Andrew. I also would like to just remind you that the clock is running. So if this can summing up, and we'll go in reverse order, I think. Let's start with you, Benjamin, and then we'll go back via Audrey and to Dr. Park.
These have been great questions and great comments, and I really just want to squeeze in. So when we talk about living in one world, one open network, do we live in an open network, or do we live in a world with actually countries that are different and have different restrictions and different views, because they still, at the layer of the infrastructure, a lot of it is still under the control of countries. And you have to figure out how do we work with that. And we are also at the layer of the platforms that most people are communicating with on now, because so few people are on the raw internet that we actually knew from the 90s and the early 2000s. So are we able to educate people that there is so much more out there than they're seeing in their walled gardens? So much more, and I'm hearing the words more communication, more discussion is needed to help people be more aware of the different stakes that are out there, so that they know what's available to them. That even if there's oppression, that there are ways around it, but also that communities can be protected from undesirable influences or content or whatever it is, so that we know that we have choices and we can find the internet that works for us.
Thank you. Audrey?
Yeah, so to the question of over-reliance on algorithms that make decisions, in Taiwan, in our basic education, we make the distinction between media literacy and digital literacy, which is about consuming information, and media and digital competence, which is about producing information. And we found that when the students learn to, for example, produce fact-check reports, when the three presidential candidates are having a debate or something, and have their name appear on national TV, if they find something wrong, that the candidate said, and so on, once you start thinking in a journalistic mindset, you become less likely to be influenced, manipulated by algorithms that make the decision for you. So I think one key point here is to emphasize on a contribution mindset, on competence mindset, so as to not to do the lazy habits of like just doom scrolling, and which straight leads to addiction, and that leads to the persuasion manipulation by algorithms. So this is one. And also I will note that I fully support the one interoperable internet, and nothing in the DNS RPC fast track notification trusted reporter mechanism is jurisdictional. I mean, between .tw or .asia, between trusted reporters, between threat indicator sharing by cybersecurity institutes, and so on. These can also be an additional layer that safeguards against malware attacks that is not entirely purely jurisdictional. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, very briefly, Dr. Park. You're muted.
Well, I want to say, I mean, the train has left the station. The cat is out of the bag. The humanity already is received this gift called the internet that has given all people around the world, all powerless individuals, the tools to compete with the big companies and governments, and the jurisdictional fragmentation that's happening is short-lived, as satellite internet is being made more and more available. So we should stop holding on to the tools of the past. We should start developing the tools of the future to fight the harms that have justified fragmentation. The same thing with sender pay rule. That is financial fragmentation, where people imposed with network usage fees will not be able to make available their messages onto the online world. The same thing with the satellite internet and other technology. It will be more and more difficult to hold on to the termination monopoly that telcos used to enjoy. It is, we should really look to the future. That will be my
Excellent.
last comment.
Well, with that look to the future, I'm going to suggest that we all want to also look to the resources that are available. And I'll go back to what Noelle was mentioning to you with what is on the Internet Society's site. There are resources that you can use if you are talking to decision makers in your local community. Please have a look, continue the conversations in the places and spaces you work at. And let's do what everybody I think said here, and that is gather again in these types of conversations to get a multi-stakeholder or at least between stakeholder ongoing conversation on this very complex but very important issue. And one final reminder, might be one world, one internet according to ICANN, but it is still a network of networks. And therein lies the rub. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and please thank our fabulous panel today. Lunch.